Ancient structures around the world, they share a kind of hidden mathematical language. There are connections between 20 of these ancient sites, from the pyramids at Giza to the temples at Angkor Wat. These are huge places built far apart across oceans and across thousands of years, and they seem to use the same proportions, the same geometric rules. It gives you a different way to look at history. It challenges the idea that these cultures were isolated. We can look at how the Great Pyramid of Giza, it might have a mathematical conversation with a pyramid in Mexico. Or why a stone circle in England from prehistory could be using the same building plan as a lost city in Cambodia. When you see the same numbers in monuments built worlds apart, you have to ask what that means. You see this mathematical harmony in nature. Look at a nautilus shell. Its spiral grows, each curve expanding from the last, following a precise pattern. That pattern is governed by a special number, an irrational number called the golden ratio, or phi, about 1.618. You find it in sunflower seeds, the branching of trees, even the proportions of our own bodies. For ancient thinkers, this wasn't a biological quirk. It was a whisper of a universal language, a code written into reality. This number, phi, became the cornerstone of sacred geometry. It represented perfect harmony, a visual balance thought to be pleasing to the eye and the spirit. Calculating it is simple. It comes from a relationship where the ratio of the whole to the larger part equals the ratio of the larger part to the smaller part. This self-similarity, this endless echo of proportion, felt significant. So when experts find this exact ratio in ancient art and architecture, they argue it was deliberate. A way for builders to infuse their creations with cosmic order, to make a temple resonate with the same principles seen in a seashell or a galaxy. And the fact that separate cultures all reached for this same mathematical key is our first major clue. It suggests a shared pursuit, a common understanding of a beautiful underlying truth. This universal code of phi is the first door we unlock to understand the connections between those 20 ancient megastructures. The Great Pyramid of Giza is there in the desert, and its base, if you take the perimeter in their units and divide it by twice the height, you get a number. It's very close to pi, the circle's ratio. That's one relationship, but then there's the faces. The slope is such that the area of each triangular side equals the square of its height. Another equation built into the stone. People like John Anthony West and Graham Hancock have said this isn't an accident. It's deliberate, encoded knowledge. They point to the alignment with true north, the mirroring of stars, the golden ratio showing up inside and out. The precision is extreme, done with tools we don't fully grasp. That makes it a benchmark, a single structure, a masterpiece of encoded math. It becomes the first point, so when you see its mathematical fingerprints somewhere else, on a temple in Asia or a pyramid in the Americas, the question changes. It's not about coincidence anymore. It's about connection. What source of knowledge could inspire that? A language of architecture, consistent and found all over the world. That mathematical standard from Egypt, you find it again but far away, across the ocean. In the Valley of Mexico, at Teotihuacan, the city's name means the place where the gods were born. You walk the Avenue of the Dead, and you see the Sun Pyramid. A mountain built by people. For a long time, everyone thought it was just a step pyramid, a platform for ceremony, but then they took measurements, and that changed everything. They looked at the perimeter of the base, using an ancient unit of measure, and it showed a relationship, a direct link to the base proportions of the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's not about the shape, they look nothing alike. It's about the numbers, the math in the foundation, the same math in two structures, 7,000 miles apart. And the Sun Pyramid is just part of it. The whole city is a map of the cosmos. The Avenue of the Dead lines up with the Pleiades, the positions of the Sun Pyramid, the Moon Pyramid, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. They form precise patterns. Triangles and ratios mirroring the sky. For the people there, these proportions weren't just engineering. They were solid cosmology. Building with these numbers anchored the city to the universe's order. It kept the earth and the sky in balance. So that's the second point, a culture with no known link to Egypt, building on the other side of the world. And they put the same silent language of proportion into their greatest monument, which forces a question. Is this independent discovery, two brilliant cultures finding the same beautiful truth? Like two inventors making the same tool, continents apart, or does it point to something connected, a thread of knowledge, ancient, so ancient it wound up in the building traditions of both the desert and the valley? The distance makes that seem impossible, but the precision of the parallel makes the other idea seem too convenient, almost too neat. The distance from Teotihuacan to Giza is immense. But the mathematical echo is there, and this pattern of silent communication, it shows up in something much simpler, a unit of measure. Imagine a surveyor walking the wet grass of the English countryside. Notebook in hand, he wasn't measuring for a road or a fence. He was measuring the stones, the ancient, massive stones of circles and rows, built thousands of years before written history. His name was Alexander Thom, a professor of engineering. For decades he traveled across Britain and France, surveying hundreds of these Neolithic sites. And he kept finding the same number, not a ratio this time, a length, a consistent unit of distance, repeated in the diameters of circles, in the spacing of stones. In the layouts of tombs, he called it the megalithic yard, about 2.72 of our feet. And according to his work, this wasn't a rough estimate. The builders used it with precision, within about a millimeter. Think about that, from the colossal rings of Stonehenge to the endless alignments at Karnak in France. Separated by hundreds of miles, built over centuries, the same measuring stick seems to have been used. It's as if every ancient site foreman had an identical ruler. This proposed unit, it opens up a shocking possibility, a standardized system, a common architectural language, spoken by engineers we have yet to name. If Thom was correct, it gives us a tangible tool, a physical key that could explain the proportional similarities between distant sites. It moves the mystery from abstract geometry into the practical world. A builder in Scotland and a builder in Brittany might have been following the same blueprint instructions, using the same basic module. Now, the scholarly debate around Thom's work is fierce. Skeptics argue that finding patterns in a collection of irregular, weathered stones is a matter of interpretation. They suggest statistical coincidence, or that human perception naturally favors certain harmonious intervals. Yet, the consistency he documented is difficult to dismiss entirely. Whether it was a universally adopted unit or a widespread cultural idea of harmonious spacing, the implication is profound. It suggests a level of communication, a shared technical knowledge across prehistoric Europe that rewrites our understanding of those societies. They were not isolated tribes. They were participants in a vast, connected tradition of building, one that encoded its wisdom not in words, but in the very spacing of the earth and stone. This megalithic yard, if real, is more than a measurement. It's a whisper of a lost consensus, a silent agreement on how to structure sacred space that spanned a continent. Stonehenge's layout, it's a puzzle. You see the big circle of sarsen stones, the uprights with the lintels on top. That's the obvious part. But outside that circle, there are 4 station stones. They form a rectangle, and when you measure that rectangle, the sides match a 5, 12, 13 triangle, a perfect Pythagorean triangle. That's not an accident. You don't get that shape by chance, not when you're moving stones that heavy. It's planned. It means they knew the geometry. They understood these principles long before the Greeks wrote them down. The effort alone, the smaller bluestones came from Wales, over 200 miles. The Sarsens, 20 miles. This took generations. It required organization, a shared purpose. They weren't just stacking rocks, they were building something precise. The alignments, they're tied to the solstices. At summer dawn, the sun rises over the heel stone. Light goes right into the circle. But the geometry, it might do more than mark one day. The rectangles and triangles could form a calendar, a stone computer, tracking the sun, the moon's cycle, maybe predicting eclipses. Timing ceremonies by the sky. Then there's the measurement. If you use Alexander Thom's megalithic yard at Stonehenge, it fits. The circle's diameter, the station stone's spacing, they're multiples of that unit. That connects Stonehenge to other sites across Britain. They were using the same language of measurement. This changes the old picture. It wasn't primitive. This was a society with astronomers, engineers. They saw the universe as ordered, mathematical. They built that order into the ground. Stonehenge isn't an isolated mystery. It's part of a tradition. The stones are a testament to a mind that thought in ratios, in angles, in the movement of the heavens. The Parthenon up there on the Acropolis. It's a different kind of precision, not like the pyramids, that raw mystery. This is refined, intellectual, a statement of human reason. For the Greeks, beauty wasn't chance. It was a mathematical equation, a law of nature waiting to be found and then put into stone. And in the Parthenon's proportions, they did it. They made what many see as the perfect visual expression of that law. The whole facade, the width to the height, it's all the golden ratio. That number, phi, the one in seashells, in sunflowers, they put it into this temple for Athena on purpose. The architects, Phidias leading them, they weren't just builders, they were philosophers working in stone. They thought if they used these universal harmonies, the building would resonate with a cosmic order itself, a structure that was, in its essence, true, but it went beyond beauty. You look at the columns, they aren't straight, they lean in just slightly. The platform under them, it curves up at the center. These aren't mistakes, they're corrections. The architects knew that straight lines from a distance would look like they sag. So they put in these curves, these inclines, a whole set of optical refinements, so the eye would see straightness, perfect balance. It's a conscious mastery of mathematics, of physics, of what we perceive. Art serving philosophy, architecture serving the divine. The Parthenon is a peak of a known tradition. We have the creators' names, we understand their goals, and yet they used the same fundamental proportion, the golden ratio, the one we find in monuments built thousands of years earlier. By cultures with no link to Greece, that's the paradox. The Greeks give us a clear voice. They explain the why. They wanted to manifest ideal forms. But their use of phi, it connects that voice to an older chorus, a silent one. It suggests this pursuit of cosmic harmony through sacred geometry wasn't a Greek invention. It was a rediscovery, a fragment of a far older understanding, echoing across time, finding new expression in the white marble up on the Acropolis. The Parthenon, for all its glory, becomes another point. On the same vast map, this pursuit of cosmic harmony takes another shape, a number so basic it defines the circle, pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Roughly 3.14159, going on forever. It's a universal constant, a truth that exists whether we see it or not, and the evidence says our ancestors knew it. They built it into their sacred sites far beyond Egypt. We saw how the Great Pyramid uses pi, its perimeter and height, but that's not just an Egyptian thing. Look at Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun. They measured it. The base perimeter divided by the height gives a number close to 2 times pi. It's a different design, but the same constant, a pyramid in Mexico echoing a pyramid in Egypt. This isn't copying a style, it's encoding the same silent number into the stone. This idea goes back further, to the very start of building big, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, over 11,000 years old. It's a series of circular enclosures. Rings of huge T-shaped pillars carved with animals. In these circles, researchers see geometry. Some enclosures show ratios between diameters and the space between pillars. Ratios that align with simple fractions of pi. These builders at the dawn of farming were organizing their sacred space with a deep sense of the circle. Now, skeptics have a point. They say if you work with circles, pi just shows up. Using a rope to lay out a circle means you're touching pi, so finding approximations might be a byproduct. Not advanced math, it could be intuitive geometry from craftsmanship, not theory. And with so many measurements in a big structure, you can probably find some ratio that looks like a constant if you search. That's numerical pareidolia, seeing patterns in random data. That debate matters. It's what separates coincidence from intent, but the pattern keeps appearing. Across continents, across millennia, in cultures with no contact, from Egypt's deserts to Mexico's highlands to the Neolithic plains of Anatolia, the same constant is there in the stones. That consistency argues against coincidence. It points to something deeper. Whether these builders found pi through calculation or through the repeated practice of sacred building, the result is the same. They were engaging with a fundamental truth of the universe, building mirrors of cosmic order. To put pi into a temple was to anchor it to reality, to make it a permanent statement of a timeless principle. So you have this shared language of constants, pi and phi. One speaks of the infinite curve, the perfect loop. The other speaks of growth, proportion, living harmony. Together, they feel like pieces of a single vision, scattered like fragments of a lost blueprint across the ancient world. The most compelling echoes show up in unexpected places. Angkor Wat is in Cambodia, in dense jungle. It's a city of stone, a temple complex so vast it feels like a landscape carved by gods, and in its design you find that same ancient conversation. This time, it's a conversation with the cosmos. The whole complex is a precise model of the Hindu universe, a microcosm built to scale. At the heart is the central tower. That represents Mount Meru, the axis of the world, and around it are concentric squares, galleries, a series of walls and moats. This layout isn't just symbolic. It's a direct application of sacred geometry following the Vastu Purusha mandala. That's a cosmological diagram, a blueprint for harmony. The proportions of the spaces, the distances, the height of the towers all come from this system. They're mathematical expressions of a spiritual idea. Scholars who measure Angkor Wat find its dimensions whispering about celestial time. The lengths of passages, the counts of pillars, the total perimeter, they seem to correspond to astronomical cycles. The durations of Hindu ages, the yuga cycles that span millions of years, they seem to be encoded in the temple scale. This is architecture as a clock. A calendar built in stone, meant to last. The alignment is stunning too. At the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower, a perfect alignment that bathes the sacred axis in light. This deep integration, where math and religion and astronomy become one discipline, that's what marks Angkor Wat as another critical node. It uses proportion not just for beauty, but as a language. A language to describe reality, to bind the earthly temple to the rhythm of the stars, to the vastness of mythical time. Here, a culture separated by a continent and millennia from Stonehenge or the Parthenon arrives at the same conclusion. That the universe operates on principles of geometry and number, that to build something sacred you must replicate those principles. The silent language of pi and phi finds a new dialect here in the ratios of the mandala. It's a different vocabulary from the Greek pursuit of ideal form, but it points to the same source, a shared human intuition that the secrets of the cosmos are written in the language of mathematics, and that by speaking that language in stone we can touch the divine. Angkor Wat stands as a testament to that, a jungle-clad monument in a global chorus of proportion. But what if this language of mathematics wasn't just for harmony? What if it was meant to be a map? You have the Egyptian desert, the sky there is completely black. The stars are incredibly clear, the Milky Way is like a river of light, and in the southern sky you see Orion. Its belt, those three stars, they form a line that's slightly tilted. Now look down from that sky to the sands at Giza. The three great pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure, they aren't in a perfect line either, they are offset. The smallest one is slightly out of alignment. In the 1980s, a writer named Robert Bovell looked up, then looked down, and he saw a reflection. He proposed a startling idea. That the Giza pyramids aren't placed randomly, they're a map on the ground of Orion's belt. This is the Orion correlation theory. It says the builders intentionally mirrored the stars. And the relative sizes of the pyramids, they even correspond to the brightness of the three belt stars. The theory goes further. It suggests the southern shaft inside the Great Pyramid was aimed directly at Orion's belt when it was built. A celestial pointer frozen in stone. So this moves us from pure geometry into astro-architecture. It proposes the ancient builders used proportion and alignment not just for earthly beauty, but to create a permanent snapshot of the heavens. A sacred landscape where earth and sky were locked together. The visual match is compelling. For many, it feels too precise to be an accident. It speaks to a desire to anchor human achievement to the timeless cycles above. To build a monument that says we are here and we are part of that. But mainstream Egyptology has strong objections. Scholars point out the correlation isn't perfect. The spacing of the pyramids doesn't match the stars' distances with exact precision. They argue the shaft alignments, while fascinating, could be symbolic rather than precise astronomical tools. The Nile River, they suggest, was far more central to Egyptian cosmology than any specific constellation. The biggest criticism is about time. Stars shift slowly over millennia because of a wobble in Earth's axis, a process called precession. For the pyramids to match Orion's belt perfectly, Bovell had to propose a reference date much earlier than the accepted construction timeline. That pushes the theory into contested chronological territory. So is it literally true? The academic debate is fierce and unresolved, but maybe the literal truth is secondary to the symbolic intent. Whether by precise calculation or inspired homage, the Giza complex embodies an ancient, almost universal impulse. The desire to encode celestial patterns onto the earth, to make the impermanent sky permanent in stone. This theme of building the cosmos below is a thread we've seen before. At Stonehenge, tracking the sun, at Angkor Wat, modeling the universe, the Orion correlation theory, whether fact or powerful metaphor, reinforces a central idea. These ancient builders saw their work as part of a cosmic dialogue, and if that desire to mirror the heavens was shared across cultures, it might explain why the same mathematical proportions, the same silent language kept appearing. It was the grammar needed to write that cosmic story in stone. There's this place, Easter Island, Rapa Nui. It's a speck of land completely alone in the Pacific. Feels like the edge of everything, and on it the moe, those huge stone faces just standing there looking inward. Their creation, it's a marvel. How did they do it? No metal, no wheels, no animals, yet they carved nearly 1,000 statues, some over 80 tons, and moved them miles across rough ground. The answer, the logistics, it tells you something. It tells you this was a society of real organization, advanced planning, division of labor, a unified purpose. This wasn't just a tribe, this was a civilization. Capable of coordinated, monumental effort. But then you look past the statues to what they stand on, the ahu. These platforms, they're not just bases. They're precisely built stone altars, some hundreds of feet long, and they have this secret, their orientation. It's not random, many are aligned with celestial events. Some face the equinox sunset, others mark the solstice sunrise or the rising of certain stars. So the builders were astronomers. They built their understanding of the sky right into the foundations. And the geometry goes further. There's this possibility that the placement of these Ahu platforms across the island, they might not be isolated. They could form a larger pattern. A network. Some theories suggest ley lines, or that the locations create shapes, triangles, arcs. When you look at a map, this idea of the whole island as a planned sacred landscape. That connects Rapa Nui to a global tradition. Stonehenge, Teotihuacan, that same impulse to take a piece of earth and engineer it, to impose a meaningful mathematical order upon it. For the Rapa Nui, this order tied the community to their ancestors, the Moai, and to the cosmos that governed their seasons, their survival. The isolation of Easter Island makes this profound. No outside influence for centuries, maybe millennia, and they arrived at the same principle independently. That sacred space must mirror cosmic order. That building is an act of alignment, aligning the human world with the greater patterns of the universe. So the Moai aren't just giant heads, they're the most visible part of a sophisticated, island-wide project. Astronomical intention, geometrical intention. Their silent gaze, it holds a kind of confirmation that this language of sacred mathematics, it's not just a cultural artifact, it's a human instinct. Emerging again and again, from the deserts of Egypt to the highlands of Mexico, to the most remote island in the Pacific, the Ziggurat of it's this structure built on the flat land of Mesopotamia. A mountain made by hand from brick in a place with no stone, and it was meant as a connection, a link to the divine. The Sumerians had a name for it. They called it the foundation of heaven and earth. The stairway was built for the gods, for them to come down, and like all these sacred places, its power came from numbers. Not just its size, the builders at used their own kind of math. A base 60 system. We still use it. You see it every day. 60 seconds in a minute. 60 minutes in an hour. 360 degrees in a circle. That was theirs, a way of counting that divided easily. It worked for watching the sky. And for building, so when they set out the ziggurat's base, they used that language, the size of each level, the angle of the stairs, the total height. None of that was random. It was sacred numerology. Certain numbers meant something. The number 7 for the planets they could see, the number 12 for the months. To build with those numbers was to weave the order of the cosmos right into the bricks. So here, at the very start of civilization, you get a different version of the same idea. It's not the golden ratio from Greece. It's not pi from Egypt. It's another dialect, a language of base 60 harmony, tied to the rhythms of the sky, the way they saw it. The ziggurat was like a calculator made of clay and bitumen. Its steps were a physical model, a model of a mathematical universe, and that shows the impulse isn't about one specific formula. Whether it's phi or pi or this sacred geometry based on 60, the goal is the same, to build a meeting point, a place where human calculation meets a divine principle. Where a plan on Earth mirrors a pattern in the heavens, so the ziggurat of isn't an exception. It's a central part of the story, proof that from these river valleys in Iraq to the jungles elsewhere, the ancient world was speaking in numbers. Each culture just picked its own favorite words. There are these constants, pi and phi, and this base 60 harmony, but the language of sacred geometry, it's more than numbers. It's a visual alphabet. Its letters are these fundamental shapes, the circle, the square, the triangle, the pentagram. They appear everywhere across cultures. They're not just simple forms, they're building blocks for a universal design philosophy. Take the circle. It represents unity, the infinite, the cosmos, the cycle of life. The square is the earth, stability, the four directions, the material world. The triangle pointing up, that's aspiration, fire, the connection between earth and heaven. The pentagram with 5 points that often symbolize the human microcosm. The 5 elements, divine proportion. Ancient architects, they didn't use these shapes alone. They combined them, overlapped them, that created a richer syntax. One of the most powerful compound shapes is the vesica piscis. You draw 2 circles, same size. The center of each one lies on the circumference of the other. Where they overlap, you get this shape, like an almond, an eye. This shape is generative. From its geometry, you can derive the square, the triangle, the pentagon. It's a geometric seed. You see it in ancient Christian art, framing Christ, symbolizing divine creation, but you also find its imprint in temple floor plans. Cathedrals built centuries earlier, continents away. It's in the layout of the Roman Pantheon, suggested in the proportions of Gothic rose windows. This visual language, it transcends any one religion or culture. It's a holistic design philosophy. A shared grammar, so 2 temples, one in India, one in Central America, can look utterly different in style, in decoration, but feel strangely harmonious. They might both be built on a mandala, a square subdivided by triangles. They might both use the vesica piscis to determine the width of the central nave. Relative to its length, the core geometry is the same. The regional expression is unique. That's perhaps the most compelling answer to the mystery of the 20 sites. It wasn't a single blueprint passed from hand to hand. It was a shared understanding of a visual and symbolic language, a language that said certain shapes, their relationships, carried inherent power. Meaning, connection to the cosmos. An architect in Cambodia, a master builder in Peru, they might never meet. But if they both spoke this language of sacred geometry, their creations would whisper the same fundamental truths. The numbers we find, the ratios of pi and phi, they're just measurable echoes of this deeper visual harmony. They are the mathematics behind the magic of the shapes. So when we step back, look at the Great Pyramid or Angkor Wat or Chartres Cathedral, we're not just looking at buildings, we're looking at sentences and paragraphs, composed in a silent geometric tongue, a tongue that seems to have been whispered across the ancient world. That shared geometry, that same language, it shows up in the Yucatan. At Chichen Itza, there's a pyramid there, El Castillo, the Temple of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. It looks like a stepped pyramid, but for the Maya, it was a calendar. A working calendar made of stone. Each side has a staircase, 91 steps on each one, 4 sides, so 4 staircases. 91 times 4 is 364. Then you add the last step, the platform at the very top. That's 365, the days in a solar year. It's not a hidden code, it's the structure. It's a mathematical fact you can walk up, a year you can climb, and it goes deeper. The pyramid has 9 levels. Those terraces divide the 260 days of their sacred calendar, the Teotihuacan. There are 52 panels on the sides. That's the 52-year cycle when the solar and sacred calendars line back up. Every dimension is part of a system. A temporal engine, but the real event is with the sun, during the equinoxes. In spring and fall, at sunset, light and shadow play across the north staircase. The stepped edges cast shadows, triangular shadows down the balustrade. They connect. They form this undulating body like a giant serpent. It looks like it slithers down from the temple at the top, down to meet the stone head at the bottom. For a few minutes, the building is alive. Kukulkan descends, and this isn't an accident. It's precise, it's engineering, a fusion of astronomy, geometry, and art. So perfect it feels like a conversation with the cosmos itself. Here, the mathematical proportions aren't abstract, they're practical. They govern time. They orchestrate light. They create a public spectacle, one that shows the cosmic order to everyone. The pyramid's proportions allowed it, the angle of the stairs, the height of the terraces. All calculated for that specific shadow at that specific moment. It shows how these principles were woven into cultural life. El Castillo wasn't just a temple to visit. It was an instrument to be experienced, a living monument using sacred math to mark time, to manifest a deity, to bind the society to the rhythms of the heavens. It's a testament. The silent language of geometry, spoken with mastery, can make the intangible tangible. A shadow can feel like a god. A staircase can feel like a year. That serpent shadow on El Castillo, it's a clock, a calendar, it's a statement, and it points to something that could link all these places. Stonehenge lined up with the solstice sun. The Great Pyramid with shafts aimed at certain stars. Angkor Wat built for the equinox. The Ahu platforms on Easter Island facing where stars rise. Nearly every site has these alignments, solstices, equinoxes, specific stars. That's not a stylistic accident. It's a convergence. It means the shared math we've been following, the echoes of pi and phi and sacred geometry, might not be the main goal. They could be a side effect, a necessary result of a more urgent, universal task, the task of tracking celestial cycles. Imagine not a blueprint being shared, but a problem being faced. The same problem for a priest in Egypt, a sage in Cambodia, an astronomer on a remote island, the problem of time when the Nile floods, when to plant maize. When the rains come, survival depended on reading the sky, so generations of watchers spent their lives observing. They marked where the sun rose each day. They watched it move north, stop at its farthest point, the summer solstice, then move south to its other stop, the winter solstice. They tracked the planets. They memorized the star patterns that signaled the seasons. That knowledge was power, sacred power. To make it permanent, to build it into society, they translated those celestial cycles into stone. They didn't build temples first and then check for alignments. They understood the sun's path, the star's position, and then designed the temple to capture it. The proportions, the angles, the measurements we find so mysterious might just come from the practical geometry needed to catch a sliver of light on a specific altar at a specific moment once a year. To frame the rising of Sirius between two pillars, to channel equinox light down a long corridor to hit a statue. The Great Pyramid's shafts pointing at stars like Orion could be part of a stellar clock or a symbolic path for a king's soul. The precise 19-year cycle of the moon, which Stonehenge might encode, required long-term observation and a way to record that knowledge across generations. The mathematical ratios become the tools to get that precision. The golden ratio, phi, makes a pleasing shape, but it also creates specific angles that could be ideal for casting a certain shadow length at a certain latitude. The base 60 math of the Ziggurat was perfect for dividing the circle, for calculating the movements of the sky. This changes the whole theory. It moves us from looking for a shared secret blueprint to seeing a shared practical problem. The problem of telling time and predicting seasons. A problem solved independently but similarly by cultures everywhere using the best tools they had. Mathematics and geometry. The solutions converged because the laws of optics and astronomy are the same everywhere. The angle of the sun at a given latitude on a solstice is a fact of physics. To mark it accurately in stone requires the same principles, whether you're in Wiltshire or Yucatan. So the silent language connecting these sites may not be a message from a lost civilization. It might be the native language of the sky itself, translated into architecture by cultures listening to the same celestial rhythms. They were all trying to build a permanent reference point. A stone anchor in the turning heavens. The beautiful, mysterious proportions we measure today might just be the elegant byproduct of that profound human endeavor. To pin down time, to make the fleeting cycles of the cosmos solid, visible, and sacred. Great Zimbabwe, these granite walls rising out of the savanna. A city built entirely of stone. For a long time, Europeans who found it couldn't accept that Africans built it. They made up stories, the Queen of Sheba. Phoenician traders, but the truth is, this was the center of a Shona kingdom. It flourished from the 11th to the 15th century. Trade, culture. The builders used a dry stone technique, no mortar. They fit these granite blocks together so precisely the walls are still standing. The scale is hard to grasp. The great enclosure, an elliptical space, the wall around it is 30 feet high in sections, and inside there's this conical tower, solid stone, no entrance. You look at it and wonder, what were they building here? The geometry gives some hints. It's not mapped to pi or the golden ratio, not that we know, but the layout has a clear order. Concentric walls, a nested space. The relationship between the outer wall, the inner passages, that central tower. It probably followed proportions that meant something to them. This wasn't random, it was planned, modular, sophisticated. You see consistent wall heights, repeated features like chevron patterns on some walls, symmetry. It points to a standardized system, a shared knowledge for building something permanent, something with meaning. Then there's the tower, the big mystery. Some think it's a symbolic grain silo, representing prosperity, royal authority. Others think it had an astronomical purpose, its shadow marking seasons. Its proportions in relation to the walls around it were deliberate, almost certainly encoding a local cosmology, a map of social structure, spiritual belief. Including this place is important. It shatters a bias, the idea that monumental precision, advanced engineering, belonged only to Europe or the ancient East. Here in southern Africa, a civilization developed its own stone-built tradition. Complex, ambitious, it rivals any. It forces the question, were these architects part of that global dialogue of form? They may not have used phi, but they had a profound, localized understanding of sacred geometry. Their principle was probably societal harmony, mirrored in stone. The ruler's authority, reflected in these impeccable walls. Their universal constant might have been the land itself, the granite they shaped so masterfully. Listening to Great Zimbabwe, you hear a new voice in that ancient chorus. It reminds you, the drive to encode meaning into monumental geometry, that's a human impulse. Not a cultural patent, it blossomed here uniquely, on a continent whose ancient engineering is still understudied. This site expands the map. It challenges you to look for the silent language. Not just in the ratios, in the intention behind the stone. The air up there in the Andes is thin. The light is sharp. At Machu Picchu, the Incas built a city in the clouds. And at the center of it, there's the Temple of the Sun. It's a focused structure, not sprawling. Its most striking part is a curved wall. The stones are fitted together so perfectly, you can't slip a blade between them. That curve isn't for decoration. It's an astronomical instrument, a precise one. Inside that semicircle, there are 2 windows. They're positioned with exacting care. At dawn on the June solstice, that's the shortest day of the year down there, sunlight comes through one window. It illuminates a specific point on the interior stone. A moment of calculated brilliance, a solar event captured and marked in granite. That alignment tells you something. The Incan architects weren't just building walls. They were weaving light and time. They understood the sun's path with such intimacy, they could design a building to interact with it on a specific morning. And the whole city reinforces that. If you look at the layout of Machu Picchu from above, the placement of temples, plazas, residential areas, it follows a deliberate, integrated plan. The specific geometric code is still being deciphered, but scholars see a sacred logic in it. How the urban design mirrors the surrounding peaks, how it aligns with cardinal directions. The city becomes an extension of the sacred landscape, a man-made harmony imposed on a natural one. This points to a society that thought in systems. We know they used the quipu. That's a complex system of knotted strings for accounting and record-keeping. It was a form of three-dimensional, tactile mathematics. A society that could encode data in knots was comfortable with abstraction, with symbolic representation. That same abstract, systematic thinking was applied to their architecture. The proportions of their structures, the angles of the terraces, the relationships between buildings, they all served a purpose beyond shelter. They were an expression of a worldview. A view that saw no separation between the earthly and the celestial, between mathematics and the divine. The Temple of the Sun is the emblem of this. Its curve embraces the mountain, its windows frame the sun, its stones are a testament to precision. Here, geometry wasn't an imported secret, it was a native language. Spoken fluently with the forces of their world, a language of integration, meant to harmonize human endeavor with the immense powers they revered, the astronomical and terrestrial powers. Beneath Malta, under that dry ground, there's a monument that goes down, the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. It's a world carved inward, a labyrinth on several levels cut right into the limestone. 5,000 years ago, and it wasn't a temple for the living, it was a resting place, a sanctuary for the dead. Its chambers go down into the dark. A silent stone netherworld, but in that silence researchers found something, a hidden language, not of light but of sound. The proportions of these rooms, they seem engineered for acoustics. If you speak in the central oracle chamber, your voice changes. It doesn't just echo, it resonates at a specific frequency, around 110 Hz. That's not random, it comes from the room's dimensions, the curve of the walls, the volume of the space. It means the builders understood sound waves. Intuitively, or maybe precisely, how geometry shapes vibration, so that adds a new layer. We've seen proportions capture light, track stars. Here they were sculpting sound. The architecture becomes an instrument, a massive stone resonator. Scholars who have studied it say the effect is visceral, that frequency can alter perception. It creates immersion, a vibration felt in the bones, not just heard, in a ritual context that would be profound. Entering the underworld, ceremonies for ancestors, all accompanied by this physical resonance. It could unite people, focus the mind, maybe induce a state of collective reverence, altered awareness. The mathematics here aren't just silent, visual harmony like phi. They're dynamic, they govern experience. That implies an ancient knowledge bridging architecture, math, and human consciousness. The Hypogeum is a testament to a holistic science, where the sacred was felt and heard, not just seen, where chamber proportions were calculated for sonic potency, not just structural integrity. It whispers that building was an act of tuning. Tuning a space to the frequency of ceremony, to the vibrational fabric of the ritual world. That sensory dimension, it challenges us to listen to these sites, not just look. To wonder what other harmonies are waiting in the stone, what other engineered experiences are there, felt only when the right note is sung. The resonant chambers in Malta bring up a basic question. How did these ideas get from one place to another, or if they even did? There's a long-running debate about it. It really comes down to two main possibilities. One side is the diffusionists. They believe in contact. They look at these 20 sites on a map and see a network. Their idea is that there was an advanced seafaring civilization way back in deep time. A culture that understood astronomy, geometry, engineering. This civilization, they think, traveled around the world, sharing its knowledge with newer cultures. Maybe they were survivors of some catastrophe like Atlantis, spreading what they knew as they moved. Or maybe it was slower, a cultural exchange along old trade routes we don't fully understand yet. For diffusionists, the shared mathematical proportions are a signature, a fingerprint from a common source. The evidence they point to is often indirect, but it's suggestive. They talk about how sophisticated megalithic building appears suddenly in different places, or artifacts like those stone spear points, the laurel leaf shape. They're found in Europe and North America, Solutrean here, Clovis there, with an ocean between them, or the sweet potato, a plant from South America, but it was in Polynesia long before Europeans arrived. That suggests ocean crossings were possible. To them, the ocean was a highway, even in the distant past, not a barrier. On the other side, you have the independent invention school. This is the mainstream view in academia. They argue that human ingenuity, facing similar problems under the same sky, often finds similar solutions. They see the shared proportions not as a borrowed plan, but as a convergent discovery. Different cultures looking at the same natural world, a shell's spiral, the seasons, the sun's path, they each figured out the same mathematical truths on their own. The golden ratio is pleasing because it's part of how living things grow. Pi is inevitable if you're working with circles. Aligning buildings to the solstice is a universal concern for farming and ritual. In this view, every culture is its own separate genius, reaching for the stars and finding the same answers. The similarities show the universal human mind. Its capacity to see pattern and order. They say the evidence for large-scale pre-Columbian ocean contact, the kind you'd need to transfer complex architectural knowledge, is still thin. And hotly debated, that's the core mystery, the battleground. It's not just about stones and numbers, it's a debate about how humans innovate, how we connect. Were our ancient ancestors isolated sparks, or were they points in a vast, forgotten network? The diffusionist story is romantic. It suggests a lost age of global unity. The independent invention theory is empowering. It highlights human adaptability everywhere. Looking at these 20 sites doesn't solve the mystery. It just makes it more pressing because every precise alignment, every echoed ratio, is another piece of evidence in this ancient standoff. The truth might be somewhere in between. A mix of some limited contact and a lot of parallel discovery, something we're only starting to see. The debate about diffusion versus independent invention, it's a real uncertainty. But the strongest evidence for a shared mathematical language might not be in stone monuments, it's in the ground. If you look down from above the desert plains in southern Peru, you see it. The Nazca lines, they aren't buildings, they're geoglyphs, huge designs carved into the dry ground by scraping away the darker surface layer to show the lighter earth underneath. From the ground, you can't really grasp it. You see a trench, a path, but from the air it becomes clear. Straight lines run for miles, perfectly straight across hills and valleys. Geometric shapes appear: triangles, huge trapezoids, rectangles that go to the horizon. And then the figures, a hummingbird with a beak longer than a football field, a spider with legs in exact proportion, a monkey with a spiraling tail. These aren't rough sketches, they're done with a draftsman's precision. The monkey's tail is a perfect spiral. The spider's legs are placed with anatomical accuracy, its body segmented by a clear ratio. To make these on that scale required more than just artistic vision. It needed sophisticated surveying. They had to take a small design and lay it out across miles of uneven ground, keeping the proportions perfect. They likely used stakes and ropes, a kind of practical geometry, to scale it up. They knew how to sight lines over long distances, how to correct visually for the Earth's curve to keep a line straight for over 10 miles. That's applied mathematics on a colossal scale. The purpose of the lines is a major puzzle. Were they ritual pathways, a giant astronomical calendar pointing to the horizon, an offering to gods who'd see them from above? It might be a mix, but their existence proves a capacity for large-scale, mathematically precise land art that expands what we mean by a megastructure. It shows that ancient geometry wasn't just for architecture. The landscape itself could be the canvas. The desert floor was their parchment, and their tools were proportion, alignment, and scale. The Nazca lines are a giant mathematical expression, written not for humans on the ground but for the sky. It's the same language of sacred geometry, but in a different dialect, one of lines and negative space, turning a whole region into a sacred diagram. The Nazca lines are one thing, but you find this language of sacred geometry much closer to home too. In southern Spain, near Antequera, there are these dolmens. The biggest one is called Menga, a tomb built more than 5,000 years ago. It's a corridor and a chamber made from these enormous stone slabs. Some of them weigh over 180 tons, and then they covered the whole thing with a huge mound of earth. To walk inside is like stepping into the belly of a stone giant. Just the effort of it, moving those rocks, raising them, it tells you about a society with real purpose, with skill. But the real mystery of Menga isn't just the size. It's where it's looking. Most of these old monuments in Europe, they line up with the sun, usually the sunrise on a solstice, but Menga's long entrance corridor doesn't point east. It doesn't face the sunrise at all. Instead, it's aimed precisely at a specific mountain on the horizon, La Peña de los Enamorados, the Lover's Rock. This isn't just a nice view, it's a fixed alignment, a deliberate choice. They connected this house for the ancestors not to the sun, but to a permanent feature in their landscape. That mountain probably meant something profound. Maybe it was seen as a god or a portal. It tells you their world view was terrestrial, not just celestial. They were mapping meaning onto the land itself. And then there are the dimensions of the dolmen, the internal measurements. Studies suggest they aren't random. The ratios between the length, the width, the height of the chamber and the corridor, they seem to follow simple geometric principles, a local idea of harmonious proportion. So Menga is a powerful example, a prehistoric community using local stone to create something on a staggering scale. They gave it an intentional alignment, but to a mountain, not a star. And they likely built it with proportional rules that gave it its presence, its weight. This drive to encode meaning through geometry and alignment, it wasn't unique to one advanced civilization. It was a fundamental human expression. It emerged right here independently with Neolithic farmers and shepherds in southern Spain. They were speaking the same silent language, using their own local dialect, writing a permanent statement about life and loss, about the enduring power of the land. For a long time, the jungle kept its secrets. The canopy hid things. It covered the full size of Angkor Wat, its outer walls and canals. It made whole cities in the Amazon impossible to see from the ground. The question was how to map what's invisible. The solution came from the air, not with people but with lasers, LIDAR, light detection and ranging. It works from an aircraft, sending out millions of laser pulses. Each one hits something, the ground, a tree, and bounces back. By timing that return, a computer builds a precise 3D map of the surface, and with a filter, they can remove all the vegetation. Every leaf, every vine, what's left is the bare earth, and on that earth the past appears, clear and detailed. At Angkor, LIDAR showed a sprawling city. A huge urban grid of roads, canals, ponds, small temples, stretching far beyond the main temple. It proved the famous site was just the center of a massive, engineered landscape. The geometry was much bigger than anyone thought. In the Amazon, LIDAR has changed even more. It found networks of earthworks, geometric plazas, long straight roads under the forest. These aren't small villages, they're proof of complex, connected societies that manage their environment on a huge scale. Their layouts show clear planning, symmetry, proportion. This technology changes everything. It gives us the hard, physical data that was missing. Now we're not just measuring the parts of a site we can reach. We're seeing the whole master plan. Digital archaeology goes further. With precise 3D models of sites from everywhere, researchers can measure proportions, angles, alignments down to the centimeter. They can run statistical analyses, compare the geometry of the Sun Pyramid at Teotihuacan with the Great Pyramid at Giza in ways that were impossible before. They can test Alexander Thom's megalithic yard theory against hundreds of new sites. This is the new frontier. It turns speculation into testable science. The connections between 20 ancient sites aren't just interesting patterns on a map anymore. They're hypotheses, waiting to be proven or disproven by a flood of new data. LIDAR and digital tools offer a promise that we might one day have a complete map of this ancient mathematical network to see if these points of light were truly connected by shared knowledge, or if they're just brilliant, isolated stars in human history. Every new scan, every new model gets us closer to that answer. We've reached the end of a map drawn in stone and shadow across the whole world. From the silent desert at Giza to the jungles around Angkor, from the lonely Moai to the resonant chambers in Malta, 20 points of light connected by a shared language of numbers. A chorus of proportion echoing across oceans and across millennia. The evidence is there, in the geometry, in the alignments, in the sheer, repeating precision of it all. It forces a choice between three doors. One door opens to a forgotten age, a lost civilization, globally connected, whose travelers shared a blueprint for sacred space. Another door reveals a world of ancient exchange, ideas flowing along routes we haven't fully charted yet. The third door shows something else, something maybe more profound. The independent genius of humanity, isolated cultures, each one deciphering the same cosmic code, a code written in seashells and star paths. Whichever door you find most compelling, one truth becomes inescapable. The old story doesn't hold anymore. The story of ancient cultures developing in isolation, unaware of each other. These monuments aren't isolated achievements. They're part of a conversation, a silent, sprawling dialogue conducted in the universal tongue of mathematics. They tell us our ancestors, wherever they were, looked up at the same sky. They pondered the same mysteries of time and harmony, and they sought to build that understanding into the very bones of the earth. This interconnected past reshapes our sense of human potential. It suggests a deeper thread in our collective story, a more unified one, a shared longing to find order in the cosmos and to leave a permanent mark. Saying we were here and we understood something beautiful, these 20 sites aren't ruins, they're questions carved in stone, waiting for us to